Good afternoon, High 10 George Realty. What a lovely day it is. And I thank you for coming to our training. I'll be going over some issues that have come up in the past week so that we're all familiar and questions and issues. So we'll go over them. And I am now going to share screen. This meeting should be about a half hour. So let me get my screen up and shared. Okay. 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 Where is my screen? I'm sorry, folks, a little bit of a technical difficulty trying to find my screen share. Nope. Okay, 1 second. Stop share. Let me do it again. Okay, there we go. Okay, so today we're going to go over just some items on the residential listing agreement. And I think the rules and stuff, it's a little bit confusing at times. So I'm going to look at the grid on a couple of things where we get consistent questions on this. So if you look on the residential listing agreement at C1, that's the percent only for the seller side, only for the listing agent. Okay, so this isn't you put in the whole percentage of maybe you're going to share it, because in that kind of circumstance, goes around the law of the NAR settlement. So we want to make sure that we're only representing the percentage in here that is for the listing agent when we're writing these. Now, this additional compensation, you can click the box here and put a percentage in here, a percentage figure. This is not for dual agency. I know I just had a question. Well, does that mean if I'm dual agency, I get that percentage? No, this is strictly for an unrepresented buyer, meaning they said to you and all the other agents, I will represent myself. I don't want you representing me. I don't want another agent representing me. I'm a lawyer, I'm a CPA, or I'm an experienced buyer. They want to represent themselves. So at that point, if you did click this box and put a figure in there and the seller agreed to it, you could charge that extra amount for an unrepresented buyer. Now, that's probably, I haven't seen it happen. Maybe it would happen in 2% or 1% of transactions. But I always think it's good to put something there just in case that does happen. It does cause you extra work. You will be at the inspections, opening the doors and such that you would do for a buyer, okay? So the other thing is the continuation period. I always like to have something in here. You can put 90 calendar days or whatever you wish, but you should always have a continuation period, meaning if it's somebody that you had showed the property to, you want to be covered. So make sure that those items you understand, but mainly the questions are on these two items here. And then I get the question a lot, well, what if I'm going to represent the buyer as the listing agent? It's the same process with any buyer. You're going to do a BRBC. You're going to have the buyer sign it with the percentage in. You're going to write the offer and insert that percentage in for the buyer's broker. Okay, so it's just the same process you would do. So those are the main questions we're getting on this. And then I'm going to come down because I just had a bunch of stuff on.
Tell me where you're going.
Okay, so now I'm going to the MLSA, Multiple Listing Service Addendum. This will auto-populate with your listing agreement.
Okay, I got it.
So if you are, let's say like one agent here, they are going to get the listing. However, the seller's doing some facelift work on the property, for instance, some planting, interior, exterior painting. So I told him, get your listing. And then because you can use the MLSA here, let's say I list it today, I'm going to check this box on A, and I'm going to put that we're not going to begin marketing to the public, including through the MLS, on a date.
Wait a minute, we sure were again.
I am on D2A,
Oh, okay.
page 2.
Mhm.
So if you have that situation where somebody's doing some work at the property or any of that, I suggest you still grab your listing. Then, so that you don't have an MLS violation of not putting it in right away, you cover yourself here, you check A and put the date there. That's the date that you will start marketing it to the public and on the MLS. So that protects you, you know, if you're doing the work and helping them and getting them quotes or anything like that, get the listing right away. That's my suggestion. So as long as the seller signs it, you're good to go. But do point out that date. Say, since we're working on the property, I've put this out 30 days. Okay. Something like that, whatever you think.
That's where you're at now.
So now I'm on contingency for sale of buyer's property. So I just went over this with another agent. If you are writing an offer and you know your buyer needs to sell the property to be able to afford the next property, you need to cover your buyer by checking in the RPA L9 in the grid. So you're going to check L9 in the grid of the RPA, the purchase agreement, and you're going to also supply with your offer the contingency for sale of the buyer's property. So be careful not to leave that unchecked if that is the case, okay? The agent that came to me had it checked, but we were going over the COP form that needs to be attached. So once you check that box, make sure that you are filling out this form along with your buyer and go over everything that they want to check. So the buyer's property contingency, buyer entering in a contract for sale and closing on buyer's property, paragraphs 2 and 4. So if you're not going to check either of these, you would drop down here, but let's read them. On B, only entering into a contract for the sale of buyer's property, that contingency. So if you check that, then you drop down to paragraph 2. These are a little tricky. Honestly, I had to sit and study it and keep reading it. So if you are in a situation where you need to pull a COP because you need to protect your buyer because they need to sell their property, come over to me and we'll go through this together and strategize with the best way to fill it out. And then we will talk to the buyer about it, okay? Because to me, this is the way it's like, go here, go there. It gets a little bit confusing. So we'll map it out together and then we'll fill it out. But I just want you to be aware, make sure you're checking that box for your buyer on the RPA, which this agent did. The only thing that we were helping with is the COP that has to be attached, okay?
Okay, now what box was that again, Alicia?
It's on the RPA, the residential purchase agreement. You're going to check on the grid L9 that it's contingent upon the sale of the buyer's property. And then you're going to, you know, if you haven't done this form to me, come to me, we'll map it out, we'll draw it out, and we'll complete this form the best way for your buyer, whatever their situation is, okay? So another thing is, I hope you have the listing on the property they're trying to sell, right? So if that's the case, you would need, with the listing, to populate your listing with the seller's purchase of replacement property. So you want to take this form and make sure you filled it out. Now it may be a 2-step process. You may fill one out with the listing agreement, right? Because they might not be in escrow because you just listed it. So hopefully by the time you make an offer on another property, it could be in escrow. So you would check B and give the escrow information, but it may not be in escrow. So this form is very important. You're going to put it in with your listing. If this is the case, when you have a buyer on your main property, you're going to do another SPRB and attach it to your counter, because maybe whatever you checked in the listing is no longer applicable. Maybe you're in escrow, you know? So you want to re-review this form and redo it again to make sure it is up to date with the current situation, because this form requires a buyer and seller signature. So I like this one. I would always include ANSI, and I'm going to tell you why, because I like the close of replacement property. I like to check this, that the agreement is contingent upon, I would add this in always, the seller's ability to close escrow on replacement property according to that contract, right? So you want to protect them with a higher level contingencies, which is what I would do. But again, if you're not familiar with these forms, because I have to sit and map them and write it out, come to me and I'll help you with it. But I just want to alert you, make sure, and our agent that is in this situation did it. She just needed a little help on the forms. So make sure that you're clued in, but I just want to let you know, when you turn this in with the listing, because it's required if you check the box that they're selling a, you know, seller purchase of replacement property, you're probably going to need to do it again and attach it to a counter with the new offer, because this may need to be updated. Okay. So in that case, you would only, of course, provide them with the updated one, not the original. Okay. So anytime you are selling a property that you notice it's in a trust, make sure at the time of the listing that you provide the trust advisory along with the listing agreement. And here's why. If you look back here, it's just information about the trust. The seller's going to sign, and at the time of listing, the real estate broker, the listing agent, is going to fill out their brokerage name here and sign it and date it. So you want the dates to be pretty close, you know, to almost match. You want to do this at time of listing. And then you take this form at the time of sale, and it becomes one of the disclosures to the buyer. Okay?
The buyer signs.
And the buyer signs. So some people miss this, but this needs to be done at the time of listing. So get it as close as you can and have the seller sign that. Okay. So another thing, those are just the items I wanted to go over, and I'm going to stop my share, but I want to go over another scenario that came up. When you have a BRBC, we know we need that so that we can get paid, right? Because if the seller checks you later and you don't have the BRBC, they don't have to pay you. So be very careful to make sure you have it. Here's my strategy when I'm submitting an offer and I got this question, why are you saying no? I don't want to put my BRBC out with the offer. I don't want to send it with the offer. Why? I don't want to show my hand. If the buyer signed that they can pay me the 3% or 2.5%, probably I just want to ask for it in the offer, which is legit, right? I might not want to show my hand. Okay. When I need to prove it, once the offer is accepted, I'm happy to send it to escrow. But for me, on my deals, because an agent was saying, how come you don't just send it? I don't want to. Because I don't want to, you know, I just want to ask for the commission, see what they say. And then if they ask for it in escrow, they don't always ask, by the way. But if I need to show it, I'll be happy to send it to escrow.
I see.
So for me, that's why I hold it and I wait. But everybody has their own strategy. This is my strategy. I just don't want my hand revealed. Right.
When you're working with a buyer
Yeah.
of the property, I get you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I try to be strategic in everything I do. But I think other people have different strategies. But for me, that's worked for me, and that's how I do it. And I only prove it when I need to. So are there any questions or things you would like us to go over? I know this is extremely short today. We're going to be, just so you know, we're going to be adding in some different trainers. We'll have things on preliminary title, things like that. So going forward, probably twice a month, you're going to see some different trainers from, you know, like a title company, things like that. They're going to address what to look for in a preliminary title. And I will say that every time you get your listing, order the prelim and NHD right away. Call the title officer when you get that prelim. Even if you've been in the business like me, well over 20 years, I still call. I will always call because even if I don't notice anything, they're the expert on their prelim. I call the title officer and I say, can you go through the prelim with me? Is there anything that I need to be clued in on? Do you see any exceptions where I'm going to need to go get documentation for closing?
I do the same thing.
Yeah,
And
always do
especially
it.
If liens, because I don't
Yeah.
know how to look for liens. If they're, what do you say, if they have what is that, loan on the house?
Yeah, the mortgage statements, all of that.
Yes, all that type of stuff.
And sometimes if it's an old trust, you know, and you know it resides in a trust, start asking the client right away because sometimes it's hard for them, you know, if you're representing a seller, maybe they need to dig for that. Maybe it's in a bank vault somewhere, you know, in a safety deposit box. So make sure after you get your listing signed, you know, to give them some housekeeping clues. And the reason that I ask the title company and I date the time I talk to them and any things they tell me is because you can have an exception that doesn't look like a big deal to you, but maybe it's something you need to go get a piece of paper with to clear, right? The other thing is in Arcadia, we just had one in Roland Heights. All over the place, there's old CC&Rs, right? So usually on the prelim, you can click the blue link and print up these old CC&Rs. Well, we just got a prelim where I went, well, there's old CC&Rs, but I don't have a click link. So I had to call the title company, go through the title with them and say, by the way, I don't have a click. I can't get the CC&Rs. So they're researching now to send those to us. So these are things you want to be proactive on. We're going to have Nancy Chan training on a Friday in October. She'll go into much more in-depth on how to look at the prelim. It's really important. And as a new agent, I didn't know that, but I know it now. So we're just giving you tips, you know, pro tips and stuff. So are there any questions?
I have one, like if you have clients that you know that if they say they got 2 bedrooms, and they end up with 4 or 5 bedrooms. We're asking for those what you call it? Permits. Is there a certain place that we can look for permits and it will show us all the LA counties permits?
Oh boy, if anybody heard her, is there a place to look online for all of LA County permits? I'm not sure. I know there is a service. Last I checked or last we used it, it was $75. And they literally go out and pull everything they can find and then they give you a copy. But as agents, I really don't recommend that we pull the permits, let the client do it.
Yeah, but I just want to know because a lot of them, like the house has been sold and they didn't go through that process before.
Yeah.
Things were done to it. If we can get those permits.
Yes.
Just go in there and type and see them and download them.
You know, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Let me table that and I'll e-blast out if I can find that. But I do have a company that I'll also attach that if your client said, I don't feel like doing this, I'm willing to pay, let them go research it. They will send you a whole stack back to the seller of the permitting. But I'm not sure if there's an online free place, but I'll find out.
Yeah, because some of those probably been transferred more than once. And they don't know. They bought the property, but they didn't know about the permits. And there were permits.
Yeah. Does anybody have any experience with online permit search out there? I don't. No? Okay, because I just use a service. So if there's no other questions, if there's any contracts or anything like that that you need help with or any disclosures, I'm always here. Always happy to help with your contracts. I love contracts. I love it all, and I especially love helping the agents. So if you get stuck or you don't understand something or you feel like you just need a second set of eyes, Peter and I are here for you always. So never hesitate to reach out. We will look over your stuff with you and help you along the way. If you feel like your deal's going sideways, let us know. We'll do our best to help you through that. Okay. So with that, if there's no questions, okay, I'm going to sign off and say thank you very much for your time and attention. It is always my great honor to be here with you. Have a beautiful weekend. Thank you all.
Bye, Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michelle.